In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The title of this presentation is The Mercy of Allah God in the Human Brain as explained in a flow diagram, like the one you see on the screen. So we will see here, brothers and sisters, why Allah God Almighty started the Quran with the verse, in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. So to start, now during functional activity of your brain, it generates heat. So the mercy requires that this heat should be transferred from the brain in minimum time, such that there is no accumulation of heat within the human brain and thus no pain. So when Allah God Almighty wanted to create our brain, the mercy requires that the heat generated due to the activity of the brain should be transferred in minimum time, and thus there is no accumulation of heat in the brain and no pain. So let's see how the knowledge of Allah God Almighty translates this mercy into a created object. The knowledge of Allah God comes to show this mercy requirement, such that He created folds within the human brain. So if you look at the human brain, there are folds like the ones you see here. Now these folds in the brain, they increase the surface area of the brain, and as such, when heat is generated, it dissipates very fast. Let me give an example. Suppose you have a cup of tea, a very hot tea. Now if you spill it on the ground, meaning you increase the surface area, the area involved in heat transfer, then it will cool very fast compared to keeping it in the cup. So here these folds that Allah God Almighty created in the brain, it increases the surface area of the brain, and as such, heat is dissipated and transferred very fast from the brain, and thus there is no accumulation of heat. So I summarize this here. So these folds lead to a very large increase in the surface area of the brain compared to a surface containing no folds. This large increase in the surface area of the brain leads to a large transfer of heat from it in minimum time, which causes cooling of the brain and no pain. So we see, brothers and sisters, how Allah God Almighty is the most merciful. And we need to show this to people such that they will become, inshallah, Muslims, and they will have happiness in this life and the hereafter. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.